can do it. Change, change. It's a sure thing. Change, change. Expect a miracle change. Watch me change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Good afternoon and welcome. This is Spirit Cafe, and we're a place for courageous conversations, nothing off the table. I'm Barbara Schreiner Trudell, and this is my co-host,
Cheryl Rogers.
And we work, live, and play on the historical and traditional territories of many Indigenous nations, including the Anishinaabe, the Wendat, and more recently, the Mississaugas and the Haudenosaunee nations. We recognize our oneness, we realize our history, and we choose to create a new reality because we know for sure we are one. Miigwech.
Miigwech.
And wow, today we're talking a little bit about anti this, anti that, anti the other thing. And I wanted to start with a quote from Mother Teresa. She said, "I will never attend an anti-war rally. If you have a peace rally, invite me." And so we got on this conversation a little bit, in the back room when we were having a chat, and it was about, anti-bullying is a big thing right now. And yet somehow bullying is continuing. And what I really believe is true is that whatever you focus on expands and grows. And so when we're focusing on bullying, we're still focusing on the problem. And I really believe we have to switch it back and begin to focus on things like compassion, kindness, respect, understanding, things like that. What do you think, Cheryl?
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. I think that, when you look at the way we've addressed certain issues, all we've done is made them worse and perpetuated the problem. So we really need to start looking at doing something different and thinking about it differently. People are not bad people. Kids are not bad kids.
No.
It's the behavior that's the issue. So what underlies the behavior, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. My husband and I created a program to teach in elementary school, and it was called Compassion, Kindness, Respect. And when we taught it to grades 4, 5, and 6, the response was really, really positive. And we actually had them do an exercise where they would take a tube of toothpaste and in a race, run it along a piece of masking tape to see who could finish first, who could empty their tube first. And once they had done that, then we asked them to put it back in the tube. When we speak our words, when we say something mean to somebody, or we say, we start, being kind of miserable, our words come out of our mouths. We can't take them back.
Mm-hmm.
And if we put them online,
Mm-hmm.
they are forever.
Mm-hmm.
They're forever. And they really do cause damage, a lot of damage. So looking at, bullying is one thing, but I think of everything when we're against something, we actually are kind of pulling it in a stronger way. And I know last week we had an issue. We got shut down by YouTube for the information shared on our show. And the information we share isn't always our opinion. We have our guests and they have their opinions. We have people who chat in the chat room and that's their opinions. And of course, we have ours as well. And, freedom of speech.
Oh, no such thing. No such thing. It just amazes me. Like, we were shut down for medical misinformation. Now, that's debatable, first of all. I know a lot of people think that, and it's not that I agree with one side or the other, please believe me, but the whole point is about having the conversation and about
Oh,
seeing what works for you, what you believe. It's about
yeah.
respecting other people's beliefs and
And
opinions.
opinions, yes.
You know, it's all those things, and when you get shut down, I've got to tell you, this thought about being a democracy and freedom of speech honestly doesn't exist.
No, I
If
don't
you
think.
think that's there, we're fooling ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true that we are, I mean, and many journalists have found that over the years. They've been jailed for certain thoughts, they've been killed for certain thoughts, um, or words that they've said or shared. And it doesn't mean that they were lying. It's just what they were presenting was not acceptable. And what we presented last week to the powers that be was not acceptable. And the person who was on the show who shared his viewpoint, all he basically said was, go and do your own research and see
Mhm,
what you find.
mhm,
And that to me should be okay.
mhm.
Now, if,
And you know, and then he spoke about the awakening and what do we do? And we all talk about the change that we want to see in the world is to be
yeah,
the change, to meditate, to work on ourselves within instead of worrying about what's going on with, you know, outside of us. You know, and so when I think about people getting upset or angry about something, um, how is that bringing peace to our world?
and that's it, that it's not. And that's what Mother Teresa meant by, I can't go to an anti-war rally, I'm not interested, because I'm not going to be against anything, I want to be for something. And I
Right.
know for me, what I teach is that you of yourself are created with all the things that you need to create a remarkable life. And it's up to you to bring that forth, to share your individual creative self. But when we're told that, we can't say certain things, we can't talk about certain topics, that's a little bit like putting a choker hold on on free
Well,
speech.
absolutely. And especially
Yeah,
when you're doing it peacefully. It's, you know, I can understand hate speech. I can understand, you know, where there's violence. I can understand because that's really about protecting people, but it's not about stopping the message, I would hope, right?
yeah.
But in today's day and age, who knows, right? You never know.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. So I know for me that, whenever I can speak about love, whenever I can speak about that being the way forward, and that each one of us is powerful, that we have within us the ability to create a life that's really remarkable. And if we're not, we actually have the ability to change that. And we
Mhm.
do it by changing the way we perceive the world around us and how we go about living our own lives. And so
Absolutely.
for me, it's really about that internal work,
Yes.
coming to a place of self-love, self-acceptance, and then from there, good stuff comes.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the things that I've learned over the years, and I just think I don't know, it comes with age, maturity, doing the inner work, but nobody can make me feel anything. So when
That's
somebody
right.
says, you made me do this, or you made me feel, or, you know, there's four, how many fingers pointing back at you, right? And nobody
Exactly.
can make us feel anything.
That's right.
We have the power to let what somebody else says or does that doesn't
Okay.
affect us, we have the power to let that affect us or not. It's a choice.
It really is a choice. And that's actually what's interesting is when you have somebody who has a really strong reaction to something, that isn't about that isn't about what was said or done.
Mhm.
It's about the button that it pushed in that person. And I think standing up for our rights and things like that is really important. I think being a voice for change is really important as well. But at the same time, I don't have to beat you up to do it.
No,
I
and
don't
I
have to
don't have
shove.
to agree with you either.
No, we don't have to agree.
right? But
Yeah.
let's have that conversation. I want to hear what you say, what you think, what what you bring. I love and respect you either way, right?
Yeah.
There's no judgment. There's no harm being done. It's just about whether I'm. How does that feel for me? Does that work for me? Is that something I want to look into more or not? Right? I have a choice, and and our choices, I think, are really being taken away from us, but so in such a way we don't even realize it.
That's true. And when you look at the US with Roe versus Wade being overturned, now women's rights have been
Mhm.
diminished again. I've heard people say they're in shock because, we fought so hard to have the right over our own health care, over our own bodies, and the US has taken that away. And when we take a look at, what will be next, what's going to come off the table next. And I think as people, like, I don't really know what the answers are. I mean, if I had them, that'd be great, but I don't. All I know is that for me, I have to look at my choices and look at my responses to things. And when I get upset about something or really angry about something, I have to take a look at what has triggered that deep emotional response. I can disagree without being angry.
Mhm.
I can
Exactly.
disagree without making you see my point. You don't have to
Yeah.
see my
Yeah.
point, right? We can just
Right.
hear each other's point and choose
Yeah.
to disagree and still be friends.
And when we feel we have to be right and
Oh
we
my
need to
goodness.
prove our point, that
Yeah.
again is where our focus goes, right? Where the
Mhm.
energy goes. And that, in every experience that I've had where people have needed to do that, it's never been positive, right? The need to
Yeah.
be right. It
Yeah.
causes a lot of conflict. It causes a lot of anger. It causes a lot of upset. So what is it about some of us that we can't let that go? And just like you're saying, we need to go back to looking at what's within, what triggers us. When somebody irritates me or something happens that just makes me so mad, it's not about them. It's
No, it's not.
about me. So I
Exactly.
then need to think about what is it about this person that is being reflected back to me in myself that, is bringing out this reaction. It's
Yeah.
bringing it out of me, but it's not being done to me.
Well, exactly. It's like there's a button being pushed
Hmm.
and they didn't install it.
No.
And we're never mad for the reason we think.
Yes.
Not to the degree like that. Like when we feel like real anger coming up, one of the questions I like to ask is, when have I felt this before? And then I just trust whatever memory pops into my head.
Hmm.
And I'm astounded by what comes up because what I'm doing is reacting to something that may have happened when I was 5 years old or
Yeah.
10 years old or 15. And it's like things have piled on and piled on and piled on. And now I explode because this person says something that feels like I feel the same way as I did in the beginning, but now it's
Hmm.
magnified.
Yeah.
So they
Absolutely.
didn't make me feel it. They just touched a sore spot.
Yeah.
I think that's what we did last week with our show was we touched a sore spot.
Yeah. And it's just so interesting because if nothing happened, we wouldn't even be bringing that. We had planned this topic anyway
Yes, yes,
before that show, right?
yeah,
So we didn't plan to bring it up in this show. We planned this topic, and if nothing happened in that, if it was just left to be, we
yep,
wouldn't even be talking about it,
exactly,
right?
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I know it wouldn't even have been part of the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. So that's another way of showing that uh salutations. Oh, hi Fiona, lovely to see you.
Hi, Fiona. Glad you're here.
Um yeah, so it's another example of where the focus goes, the energy flows.
Well, and that's, I mean, that's the great message, right? Wherever we put our energy, that's what we see expand and grow. And one of the things that has challenged me often is, there's a lot of, organizations out there fundraising and stuff. And, the language that we use in our fundraising, well, the language we use in anything is so important. And the language we use in fundraising can get a little askew sometimes, not deliberately, but by accident. And so I remember going into a store because everybody here is focused on breast cancer and breast cancer research. And so all of these stores are, saying, hey, you've made your purchase. Would you like to donate to? And it should say breast cancer research. But I have caught people saying, would you like to support breast cancer? Mm-hmm. Absolutely not. Mm-hmm. And I get a look from them, but I think you were with me one day when I did that. Mm-hmm. And it's like the way we speak, the language that we use, and the way we go about the business of our lives is so important that we make sure that what we're saying is what we mean, because the universe is exact. It responds to what we put into it. It's like our computer. If I type gibberish and send you an email, you're not going to understand it.
No, it's going to be gibberish.
It's going to be gibberish. That's the only thing that can come from it. And if I'm living my life in that way, everything that comes back to me is going to be messy and confusing and a complete mess. So what we do, and I really love what we teach, which is the science of mind, or the the 12 powers in unity, and the idea that we are powerful beings, that we have within us this incredible resource, right? This divine presence that's us, that is powerful, and we can use it.
Absolutely.
We're using it already, kind of unconsciously, but we could use it consciously and create something fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. And exactly what you said, it is right. It's not, it is whether we believe it or not. It's a principle. So we are creating consciously or unconsciously. And I think that we are I think that we're still in baby steps. We're still very new as a human race. And so we have been creating unconsciously, which is why I believe the world is the way it is today. So now when we start realizing that we have that power within, I always think to myself, that's what made in the image and likeness of God means. It doesn't mean we look like God. I think we've made God in the image and likeness of ourselves, right? But what it means is that we can co-create like God, because we are part of the one. And therefore, we have the same power as one. And so when you realize that, and you start practicing that, and I'm not saying that I am doing that, because believe me, there's a lot of undoing to do before I can embody that and truly live in alignment with that, because of the environment we live in, the way we're brought up, the way we're conditioned. So as a race, again, there's so much undoing that needs to be done so that we can truly believe that and live accordingly.
And begin to live it. And we can practice it in little ways.
Yes, we do.
Because when we start being for something rather than against something, what happens is there's an energy that compels it and moves it forward. And what's interesting? It's sort of like when we put a negative before anything, it's almost like the universe doesn't see the negative. And so, anti-war has never created less war. And anti-bullying hasn't cured the bullying thing. And so we're looking at, when we put a negative in front of something, how it comes to pass. And I have a funny example. I didn't share this with you, but I'll just do it now. Sorry. Um, the you had sent me a link about Unity publishing books. And again, it's interesting how the negatives don't work because I have a children's book that is ready to be published. And so when I read the link, it was everything except we're not doing children's books, we're not doing this, we're not doing the other thing. And I thought, isn't that fascinating that it says we're not doing that? And that was the one thing you said they are, right? You had read it.
Well, I didn't realize there was an exclusion of anything. So my
Exactly.
apologies. I just thought,
No,
that's great.
Yeah, no, I was so excited. But it's how when they put that, when they exclude something, it's somehow we miss it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't catch that
Mm-hmm.
that exclusion,
Mm-hmm.
just see the overall message, and we miss a beat. And that happens so often in our overall communications. And anyway, I was gonna call you back and go, oh, they don't take children's books. Darn. But I've got another publisher that I'm gonna talk to. So
Good.
get that book
Good.
out there. Yeah, it's time.
That's a
but this
pity,
year-
though. It's such a pity because, oh my goodness, what a great opportunity, right?
Oh my gosh, I know. I was so
Yes.
excited when I thought, and
Yeah.
why wouldn't they consider a children's book?
Exactly. Yeah. Interesting. I
Hmm.
think I'm gonna ask somebody that question at Unity.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, maybe I will too. Because it's interesting when we think about the change that we're looking to create in our world, right? Compassion, kindness, respect, the desire to understand one another rather than condemn and criticize and judge. When we look at where we need to start, we don't need to start with 60-year-old people.
No.
We need to start with 3-year-old people
Exactly.
and 1-year-old people
Yeah.
and 5-year-old people.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I created the program for the elementary schools, and now we've been asked to create it for high school. So I'm in the process of doing that.
That is so exciting and so fantastic. Really.
Yeah, it's so good to be able to offer something, and that will be offered in French. My daughter goes to a French public school, so we'll be doing it in French for both elementary and high school. And then I'll create the high school curriculum in English because I already have it in the elementary. And then that's something that can be promoted that hopefully will help children come to understand their own power and also their own limitations.
Right.
The limitations of society, that when you put a message out, it's out there.
Exactly. Yeah. And to understand their power and to be empowered to use them in a positive way, to believe in themselves, to believe they can, all those messages. I think it's so important for emotional development.
It really is. Yeah.
Those kind of things. So yeah, definitely. I'm excited about seeing a lot more books out there for children about spiritual consciousness and opening the heart and all that kind of thing, rather than being angry but also understanding, about anger and things like that it does happen, it does come up, and it doesn't make you a bad person, but you can choose to change that and look at it differently.
Well, that and how we respond to anger. There's nothing wrong with anger. It's just when we project it onto someone else that it can be harmful. And so if we can learn to address our anger in a different way, to realize that we can have differing opinions, we can be angry about something, we can grieve things, all of our emotions are perfectly fine and valid.
Right.
Until we project them onto someone else.
I love that. I love that you said that. There's nothing wrong with it because it's the human experience. It's when we project it out and when it causes harm elsewhere. That's when it becomes
that's when it's a problem. If I start screaming and yelling at you and hitting you because I disagree with something, or you've said something that hurt my feelings, well, who's done the greater damage ultimately? And then also I think about the way we perceive the things that happen in our lives. Somebody says something to us and we take it as an insult or whatever, and we're hurt by it. And then for the next 50 years, we keep reliving it and reliving it and reliving it. Well, who did us the most harm?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did.
That's such an interesting point, because how often have you heard this story where we live with something like that for however many years, 50, 60 years, and then we bring it up somewhere in a conversation with someone, and it's like they don't even remember what you're talking about, right? And you've been carrying this on your back, and it's been this load that you've had, that's really sort of caused you such angst and unhappiness, and they don't even remember anything. They don't even know what you're talking about. So, again, it's the stories we tell ourselves, and it's perception. It's all about perception, right? There's two things, it's about perception, and it's also about what we choose to believe, what we want to believe, right? So it's interesting, because I had a conversation with somebody after last week's show as well, and they said, oh, I agree with everything he said except that. And I'm like, okay, so look at that. Like, why? Why don't you look into whatever he said about that and see if there's any truth to it for yourself? You don't want to believe it. You want to believe everything else, but you don't want to believe that.
Yeah.
Right?
So some research, right? We have the ability to do that.
Exactly. But that's just one example. We do that in life. We become complacent. We don't want to put in the work. And so we just accept what's being fed into us.
Yeah. And I think that's been one of the great challenges is, the government tells us something, and then the media, oh my gosh, the media. If somebody needs to be taken off of YouTube or wherever, it might be the daily news.
Absolutely. The lies that politicians tell. And I'm like, oh my God, they are blatant lies. They are factual, that it's a lie. And it's still shown, and it still goes out there, and people believe the lie.
And people do. And, in the way that the media presents the stories, because they present opinion rather than fact, and they mix the two up so much that it's hard to know really what the facts are. So it's like we're in this dilemma continuously about, what's really going on here. And I found fascinating to watch, like, American news, Fox or CNN, and then to watch the Canadian news, CBC or Global, and then to watch the BBC on the very same story. The stories that come through have a different flavor to them depending on who is presenting it. And when I was studying journalism in college, it was, facts only. Who, what, where, when, it's like fact. If it's a fact, you can put it in. If you put in an opinion, you got a great big X across your paper, and it came back to you with like a 0, right? So it's like fact. And that's not the way it is anymore. Now it's, here's my opinion, and what if this happened? What if that? Well, what if that didn't happen?
Yeah. So why are you even bringing it up, right? I mean, and the other thing that I notice with the media, with the news on TV and stuff like that, they will use a word before in the sentence that dramatizes what comes after it. Now that's not fact, right? It's dramatizing it. It's making it like
sensationalism.
Yeah, exactly. And and we watch it and we believe it. And that's also how they sway our vote. We think, we're voting, we have the power. Well, who has the power, really?
And, it's interesting because one of the things, I don't watch debates of politicians. And the reason I don't is because I don't get any information from it. The only thing I get is you did this, you did this, you did this, you did this, rather than I stand for this, this, and this, right? And so I get very frustrated by it. So I don't watch it. I will go online and I will read, the policies of the party and things like that to form my opinion. But we're coming up to a break here.
That
So
was
everybody,
really-
stick around. We're going to have a little commercial break. You're watching Spirit Cafe. I'm Barbara and this is Cheryl, and we will be right back.
New Thought Media Network is on the rise. We're looking to grow with you. Do you have technical media experience? Or perhaps a desire to learn? Are you willing to volunteer your precious time and attention? We share this message to benefit all. If you possess a computer with a camera and a microphone, we will share our knowledge with you. Behind the scenes or being the star, let us bless our one. Contact us at info@ntmedia.org.
Well, welcome back. We're doing our Spirit Cafe show, and I'm Barbara.
And I'm Cheryl.
And we just like to talk about stuff.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter what stuff. We just want to talk about stuff. One of the, there's so many conversations that are a little bit taboo. Religion is taboo. Politics is taboo. Death and dying is taboo. It seems that these conversations are, don't go there because somebody's going to get offended or uptight or whatever. But I think it's really important to go there.
Mm-hmm.
I think talking about, what it is we love or don't, what is important to us or isn't, I think is really, really important. And just getting to that place where we begin to have conversations with each other to understand one another.
Exactly.
That makes a difference. And also the human condition, because we're all dying.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's how we have been brought up to think about dying and to believe about dying. And it's just so interesting that, it's the one thing that we will all absolutely experience and go through, right? We were born and we're going to die. And yet it's such an uncomfortable conversation for so many.
It really is. I did a series of interviews a few years back on death and dying, and I called it the F and D word because, you're not supposed to say the F word in public, and nobody really wants to talk about the D word either. So, but it was interesting just to record, not my opinion or anything, but just to hear people's beliefs about death and dying. Mm-hmm. And it was quite rich. It's on my Barbara Schreiner Trudell YouTube channel, but it's like the ideas around death and dying are so different depending on our spiritual beliefs. And I know in New Thought, we really believe in the immortality of our soul. And that means that this body, yes, it will get laid to rest, but who I am continues on into a new experience of whatever is beyond this. I don't believe in heaven and hell. I think I live that right now.
Exactly. Heaven and hell is what we make here on earth.
Exactly. On a good day, I'm in heaven, and on a bad day, I'm in hell.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's not a vacation destination point. Darn it.
No. Well, and just before we went to break, you were talking about politics and how anti
Yes.
they speak about each other, and
Yeah.
this is about being anti or for. And wouldn't it just be wonderful if politicians, I mean, they should, if they want to make a law, that's a law they should make. That they can't
Yes.
be, they can't, because that's like hate speech, right?
It is hate speech, yes.
Right. So wouldn't it be wonderful if they spoke about, this is what, I believe in, this is what I plan to do, this is my, this is where I would like to have an impact in the world, or
Yeah.
in my community, or
Yeah.
something like that. Like, oh my
Here's
goodness.
what I stand for.
Exactly. Not
That's,
against you. Here's what I
yeah.
stand for. Wouldn't that be
What's
wonderful?
fascinating, I remember in college when I was taking a political course. I think it was Canadian politics I was studying at the time. And what was fascinating was the teacher was brilliant. And he just went through, because, most of what happens here is either conservatives or liberals. And so everything, he was going, oh, the conservatives put this idea forward and the liberals shut it down. And then the liberals got into power and they put it forward and the conservatives put it down. And it's like, we're all trying to accomplish the same thing, but we can't have their name on it.
Mhm.
It's like,
Mhm.
I can't have their brand logo
Mhm.
on here because it has to be my idea if it's a good one. And I thought, it's fascinating that we don't notice that.
No. And who suffers the consequences of that,
Ta-da.
right?
Yeah,
I
those of
mean,
us living the reality, right?
yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah.
I think about, anti-poverty. And again, I don't believe in anti anything. I want to have prosperity thinking, and prosperity thinking is, if I see a problem, then what would a solution be?
Mhm.
And one of the things I've noticed here in Canada, I don't know what it's like in the US or in other countries, but in Canada, especially in Ontario, when we have a mother with a young child who is on social assistance or welfare or whatever you want to call it, here we call it Ontario Works, and it doesn't work.
Mhm.
A mother living in Toronto with one child cannot afford housing with what is being paid to her. She's getting a little over $1,000 a month. Well, in order to rent a studio apartment, like a bachelor, which means it doesn't have a bedroom, just a living space
Mhm.
with a bathroom and a closet maybe and a bit of a small kitchen, that $1,000 a month.
Mhm.
If you want to rent a room in someone's home, just sharing,
Mhm.
that's even going to cost you probably $700 or $800 a month. So the amount of money that these women are receiving is nowhere near. And when I used to volunteer at an organization that supported young women, the whole thing was these women with their babies were living in shelters.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well,
Something wrong with the system.
there's something
The
wrong
system
with
is
the system.
broken. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and even the idea of homelessness. We've got people living on our streets and sleeping outside in the cold, and we look at, well, oh, what are we going to do about that? Well, instead of tripping over them, what if we gave them a home?
Mhm.
And there was years ago, and I can't even remember what city it was, but I remember a meeting of mayors here in Toronto who sat back and they were talking about the issue of homelessness. And one of the mayors said, well, we don't have any. And everybody was like, whoa, what did you do? And he said, we
Mhm.
gave them a home.
Wow.
The simplest answer is generally the right answer,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
And people will argue, well, we can't afford to do that. You know what? We can't afford not to. When
And
you
I
consider,
remember you told me that story, but what came out of that was so precious and so beautiful, because once people had a home, they started feeling a little bit more respectful about themselves. They valued themselves more. They cleaned up. They got jobs.
yep, they
So
were
it's not,
safe. Yeah,
they say again.
they were safe.
They were safe, exactly. And we all want to feel safe. We all want to feel
Absolutely.
like we are of value just by being a human being,
Exactly.
right? And so
And the
when you give
majority
somebody that dignity back, that's what it
absolutely
is. It's about dignity.
dignity. Yeah,
That empowers them to do
exactly.
better in their lives.
It really does. And the majority of people will.
Yeah.
There might be a couple people who take advantage of the system. There
Hmm.
always will be, right?
Hmm.
But for the most part, when people are cared for, when they're treated with dignity and respect, and that changes the game, that's when we start to see a positive uplift in their experience. All of a sudden, hope becomes part of the equation rather than hopelessness.
Exactly.
And that, and a lot of the people who are living on the street, I mean, I know here many of our homeless have mental health issues,
Mhm.
and we're not supporting that by having them on the street.
Yeah.
And shelters are not an answer because they're not a safe place.
No.
For the most part, your stuff gets stolen, the little bit you have, or there's violence. There's lots of things that happen in these homeless shelters that people don't feel safe.
Mhm.
And then when you're looking at youth who are homeless, well, often they're homeless because the foster homes they were in were abusive or whatever. And so we look at all of these systemic problems
Mhm.
because we're looking at problems and trying to correct them. It's like putting a band-aid on a severed carotid artery. It
Exactly.
isn't going to work. We
Exactly.
have to we have to we have to look at the underlying cause of some
Yeah.
of the issues that we have, and it really comes from the ideas of separation. When we start to acknowledge our oneness, when we
Mhm.
start to acknowledge that we are all part of something really beautiful and immense, when we start working for one another,
Mhm.
when we try, I was in a park yesterday walking with a girlfriend, and there's a gentleman sitting there reading The Godfather. And I went, "Whoa, that's a great read for the sunshine." And he goes,
Mhm.
"Yeah, it's really good, better than the movies." And I went, "Yeah, I read it. I read it when I was a teenager,
Mhm.
when it first came out." And he goes, "It's 50 years old now." I went, "Oh," I said, "Darn, now you know how old I am." And he just laughed. He said, "Oh, you look like you're 29." I just laughed. I went, "I love you."
But it's so true.
It was this funny little moment, but it just the warmth of the exchange and the joy that I felt, the joy that I could see from him, it was just lovely,
Yeah.
being able to just laugh and play
And
and
connect, right? That's a
connect.
connection.
Yeah. And we feel valued when we do that. And a lot of people don't connect out of fear.
Mm.
And I know I talked about that on one of my Joy shows, was fear, because a lot of the stuff that we fear is just false evidence appearing real.
Yeah.
We are imagining all manner of bad stuff. And why do we do that? Because the media is pumping us full of negative stories that are on a
Mm.
loop. And we
Mhm.
start to believe that the whole world is a bad place.
Mhm.
Is there bad things going on? Yeah, absolutely there is.
They always
Is
have been.
everything, yeah, always has been. Is
Mhm.
everything bad? No. Are we safer at home than we are outside? Not necessarily.
No.
Sometimes home is less safe.
Yeah.
So it's like, we need to change the stories that we're telling, and the way that we're viewing life overall. And I think if we could start to come from a more positive place, like, what is it that I want out of life? What is it I choose out of life? What is it that I really seek, rather than what do I not want?
Exactly. Exactly. And
Yeah,
and you know what? And letting my neighbor do what they want to do and what they need to do, right? And
yeah,
not letting that bother me. It's none of my business,
exactly.
right? My business is my business. My business is about what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, where I'm doing it, the
Yeah,
choices I make. That's my business. It's not anybody else's business, but
yes.
we make each other's business our business, and that's where we become entangled in all this
Yeah.
mess, right?
Yeah, that's such a valid point, Cheryl. It's like sometimes we forget what's mine to do.
Hmm.
And what's mine to do is what is affecting me directly.
Mhm.
And if I'm feeling any emotional pull with anything, there's something for me to do. And one of the things that I've found, like the things that I find repulsive or really irritating, when I think back, that's a message I got as a little child
Mhm.
that I said or did something, and the reaction of my parents was such that I felt like absolute shame or like
Yeah.
I'm the worst person ever because
Mhm.
this happened. And the truth of it is, that was just an opinion that somebody shared, but they shared it in a really strong way, and I bought it.
Mhm.
And now it's kind of deeply ingrained in me. And
Mhm.
so I might feel that. What I've discovered is when I feel that way, when something really offends me or whatever, doesn't happen as much anymore, but when it does, I explore, whoa, where did that come from?
Mm.
And
Mhm.
why am I feeling so strong about it?
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
what's the story here really?
And that's our work to do, right? That's the
Our
inner
work.
work that we talk about. And if each and every one of us just did that,
That's all that we need to do.
that's all we need to do to tip the scales for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what we teach at CSL and what we teach at
Mhm.
Unity is, we're one, and each one of us is an aspect of this infinite universe. And we have within us the power of that. And
Mhm.
we get to choose how to direct it.
Yeah.
We're each responsible for our own thinking and our own lives. And when we take responsibility for our lives, all of a sudden there's nothing left to blame anybody about.
Yeah. Yeah.
I created it and I have the power to change it.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's you said something earlier about band-aids on the system, and I've
Yeah.
often thought about that. I've thought about how we create something and then there's a repercussion
Yeah.
that we didn't anticipate. But
Yeah.
instead of going back to what we created and looking at why or wherefore or how can we do it differently, we now address that. And then something comes out of that that's not good. So we address that.
Yeah.
And we just get further away from the original thought,
Exactly.
right?
Band-aids on band-aids on band-aids.
And how does that solve anything? So
And that's it. It doesn't, right? Like that's the whole thing. But if we go back to cause,
mhm,
if we go back to what is the underlying challenge, what's the underlying problem? And what I believe, and the reason why I started writing children's books, is I really believe if our children knew better, they would grow up to be adults who know better
yeah.
and can create greater harmony, greater respect. And so that I was watching my great grandson, I babysat him, he was here for a week. And he wore me out completely, that little 6-year-old. A little tornado running around my house. But what was lovely about it was watching how he interacted with humanity
Mhm,
and his compassion. And he's 6. And so I have great hope for this
mhm,
child because he cares.
mhm.
He talks to everybody,
Yeah.
wants to know how people are, who they are, what they're doing. Like he's really curious about them.
Mhm,
And when he saw somebody laying on the street wrapped in a blanket, he was wondering where we could find another blanket.
mm.
And then he said, if I had $1,000,000, I would give that person a home.
Oh,
And I thought that's the type of thinking
yeah.
that we need moving forward.
Yeah.
Instead of going, oh, what a lazy bum,
Mhm,
because we don't know. We don't
mhm.
know their
No,
situation. We don't know how they got there. We
no.
don't know anything, but we
Mhm,
make an assumption.
mhm,
And it's those assumptions that are so painful
mhm,
to the people that are around us.
mhm,
Um, I met a woman in Calgary who, she had all her possessions in a shopping cart and she was pushing it along an outdoor mall. And when I stopped to give her some money, she was, she said, wow, she said, you're being so nice to me. And everybody's been so mean. Like people spit at her and cursed her out. And all I could say was, I'm so sorry.
mhm.
But by the grace of God,
Yeah,
I could be you. I could be
exactly.
in your position. And that's something that we don't always think about.
No. It's the same thing with people in prison, right? We
Absolutely.
think that, if we put them over there, them, we're dealing with the problem. Well, we
Yeah.
definitely aren't. And they aren't them, they are us,
Yes.
right? I've done some
Yes.
work in prisons and I say the same thing. There, by the grace of God, go I,
Exactly.
right? We are all human beings. We
Mhm.
all make mistakes, things, and I'm not saying, I'm not excusing anybody's crime or harm that they've committed against someone. However, there is a moment where something like that,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. And if we had a different color skin,
A different upbringing, a different
different
background,
upbringing, if we
you
lived
know,
in a different neighborhood, we would
yeah,
be more susceptible to being falsely accused of things.
absolutely, yes,
So, yeah, there's so many aspects to this human journey that, um, I want to spend as much time as I can thinking about the beauty of life and the beauty of people. And when my youngest daughter, because I got smarter by the time she was born, when she was growing up, I never taught her stranger danger. That was a
hmm
big thing when she was little.
hmm
And I went, no, 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 do not talk to my child about that
hmm
because she doesn't need to be afraid of strangers. There may come a day where she needs one.
hmm yeah,
She
good
needs someone
point.
she doesn't know to support her or
Yeah.
help her. And I always taught her, trust this.
hmm
Trust what you feel. If somebody makes you feel really uncomfortable, trust that. And I don't care if it's family, friend, or foe,
hmm
you know, a stranger or, your best friend's parent or whatever. Like, trust your gut.
hmm
And I live by that. If something is really uncomfortable, I'm going to pull away from it. If it feels wrong, it probably is wrong for me. Doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean it's bad for everybody. But for me, it is. It's not
That
right.
sounds like another good book, Bob's. I love that. When you talk like that, I'm like, oh my goodness. I wish I could undo the things I did when my kids were children. If I'd only heard it and listened to this, and you should do a parenting course. Like, oh my gosh, because then we wouldn't have to undo all the damage
Yes.
when
Yeah.
when we're adults, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the key is I'm just writing myself a note to write a children's book about intuition rather than stranger danger.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I think when we look at, I mean, there's so much that's just reasonable when you really step back and think about it. And if we listen to our bodies, we would receive so much information that would help us to understand what
Yeah.
supports us and what doesn't, our intuition, even our overall health. And I don't want to talk about health stuff because we know
Mhm.
what happens when that comes up. But I think we know what is working for us and what isn't.
Mhm.
And I believe in doctors and medications and hospitals and I believe in all of that because I
Yeah,
believe everything is a part of this one thing. So it
exactly.
all has value.
Yeah,
And some of it will work for me and some of it won't,
yeah. And
right?
what will work for you might not work for me. And that's
Exactly.
okay, right?
And it's okay. Yeah.
It's okay.
It's okay. It's like
Yeah.
even the idea, "Gotta drink 8 glasses of water a day." No, you don't.
Mhm.
I was talking to a naturopath. I said, "How could that be the case when a man who's 6'6" and weighs 300 pounds needs 8 glasses of water, and I'm 5'2" and 135? Why do I need 8 glasses of water?" And she
Mhm.
goes, "When you go to the bathroom, is it dark yellow or is it clearer?
Exactly, right?
That'll tell you if you're getting enough water."
Yeah.
There's there's my, uh there's my, medical opinion today. But it's
Well, I mean, nobody can argue with that, that's for sure, because I think that's
well,
something
yeah,
I
we'll
know
hope.
I've heard. So, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
talking about how we assess how much water we need.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, it makes sense that all of us would have a little bit different
Yeah,
needs. We're different blood types, we're different heights, we're different weights, we come
yeah,
from different countries or cultures. And so there are differences that are really, really important that we need to acknowledge.
yeah.
And we need to just respect that.
Mhm.
You don't have
Absolutely.
to do it my way.
No.
Your
And I
way's
can still
fine.
love you and appreciate you
Yeah.
and respect you and not be upset with you,
Not be threatened by me.
not be threatened by you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Before I'm looking at the time and I'm thinking, we need to let people know and ask them to subscribe to our channel at youtube.com/ at Spirit Cafe Show. Because in future we would like to be streaming from there and not on Unity and CSL's
Right.
YouTube channels, because we want to respect, that anything that comes up in our show is not an opinion or a belief system of either movement. It's just
Exactly.
from a conversation that we're having. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, there are people that may take it the wrong way and, may use it against either us or the organization. So we just want to respect their space and what these movements are doing, which is such wonderful good work out in the world,
Yes,
creating
absolutely.
a world for all. And to
And
also,
we'll be on New Thought Media as well.
I was
We'll
just
be
going to
on New
say, and New Thought Media, and to also acknowledge New Thought Media and
Yeah.
invite you to make, even if it's a small donation, to ntmedia.org, because we wouldn't have this platform if it weren't for them. And
Yeah.
so we are so grateful for that, to be able to be here and have these conversations with you, and for you to be able to not just be here, but to have access to all the shows that New Thought Media Network offers, which are fabulous. There are so many fabulous shows. I would invite you to look at some of
Yeah.
those as well.
Yeah, there's lots of good stuff going on here. The good news on Friday nights is always great. There's such interesting
Mm.
stories that Reverend Robert comes up with, and sometimes I host it. I have fun when I do.
Cool.
And even on Friday mornings, ministers talking shit. It's like it's such a fun time to just explore the news or events that are currently going on and how we feel about them.
Mhm.
And it's just us, it's our
Mhm.
opinions, and the things that we're doing on this network allow us to be able to have a platform to share different opinions,
Mhm.
and I think that's a really valuable thing. And the greatest thing I can say, for myself, as we're getting close to closing, is be for be for something, whatever it is in life that really you value. Be for that. I'd rather be for love, compassion, kindness, and respect than against bullying, war, and
Mhm.
violence. I would just as soon put my energy into
Mhm.
supporting a really strong and beautiful idea. How about you, Cheryl? What are you
You
for?
know, I couldn't have said it better. Absolutely, be for peace, be for love, be for respect, be for valuing people and things, animals, our planet. Yeah, it's not about fighting against something. If we were for everything, we would certainly, I think, be moving forward instead of either stagnating or moving backwards, as we have seen in some areas.
Yeah, in some areas there has been some regression.
Yeah.
Women's rights being one of them, I think that's a
Mhm.
regression. And my hope is, being a mother of two girls and, a grandmother and a great grandmother, my children are going to be more affected by some of the rulings of political parties and religions, because I think religion has played a role in some of these changes that are taking place. And I think everybody should have equal rights and equal opportunity for speech, for airing opinions. And I came across something a while ago that I really, really loved and would love to I don't know, maybe create a story time on New Thought Media Network. This might become my full-time job. I'll have to figure out how to get paid for it. But this idea of the human library where a person just shares their story.
Love
And
it.
I really love that. I've had a small sample of it, and it was so beautiful to hear people talk about their lives, the
Yeah,
things they had done, where they had gone, who they were. And what you come to understand is how it shaped who they are today.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
who knows? Maybe one day down the road, we'll have the human library on here.
I think that's awesome because it helps us connect and it helps us see how we are more the same than different. And
Yes.
the more we can do that in this world, the more I think there will be peace and there
Yes.
won't be so much anti the other.
Right. For
Mhm.
something.
Mhm.
Well, I'm for all of you. I love you. Bless you. I love you, Cheryl, Deja,
I love
for
you
being in
too.
the background.
Thank you, everyone, for being here, for choosing to be here. Yeah. And watch other things, but come back here next week on Spirit Cafe Show. Sign up for Spirit Cafe Show on YouTube, like us, and see you next week.
Like, share, and comment.
Like, share, and comment. Thank you.
Love you all. Bye for now.
Bye.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network, come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.